ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਮੈਂ ਜਸਬੀਰ ਭੋਗਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਟੀਵੀ ਦੇ ਵਿਨੀਪੈਗ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦਾ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਨੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੰਡੀ ਲੈਮਰੂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਬਰੋਜ਼ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੋਂ ਸਿਟਿੰਗ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਔਰ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕੰਟੈਸਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਟਿੰਡਲ ਪਾਰਕ ਕੰਸਟੀਟੂਐਂਸੀ ਤੋਂ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਬਣਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ। Welcome to our studio, Cindy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. First of all, I would start from a little girl's perspective.
Sure.
Who has seen her father thriving into his role, first as an MLA and then as an MP multi-times.
That's right.
Right. So of course, it's a no-brainer. You must have been looking up to him for all the guidance and support as well.
I still look up to him for that guidance and support every day.
Yeah. And I think 4 years ago or 3 years ago, you were Kevin Lamoureux's daughter, but now you are Cindy Lamoureux. You have a name of your own, you have your own identity, and you are loved by the people of your constituency.
Thank you.
So one question. So you are sitting MLA from Burroughs.
Correct.
So what made you go to Tyndall Park this year?
Absolutely. So Elections Manitoba, they actually redistribute the provincial boundaries here in Manitoba every 10 years. This happens regardless of who is in government. Every 10 years, Elections Manitoba does this. Mm-hmm. So this past year, when Elections Manitoba changed the boundaries, they actually changed it so a big chunk of my current constituents in Burroughs are now in Tyndall Park. Mm-hmm. And so I was then faced with a dilemma. Do I follow them into Tyndall Park or do I stay in the constituency that is continuously called Burroughs? The reason I chose Tyndall Park was because that's actually where I grew up. The schools in Tyndall Park are Stanley Knowles and Garden Grove. Those are the schools I went to as a child. I lived on the streets in Tyndall Park, whether it's Wheatsell Street and Burroughs Street and Egaz. So it's the area in which I'm most familiar. It's where my friends and my family still live to this day.
Your home, right?
It is my home. It's where I identify myself. And so I've come to I love Tyndall Park. It is where I'm most familiar. It's where we have our annual Canada Day celebration. And I suppose that's why I made the decision to run there.
Of course, you don't follow the name, you follow the constituents, right?
Absolutely.
The people who support you. So basically, you kept staking with the constituents that have been supporting you for the last so many years, and your father before you when he was an MLA there, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've been doing a lot of door knocking.
Every day.
Every day. It's a major part of your election campaign.
Yes.
And you must come across many grievances that people have against the ruling party.
Yeah.
So would you be able to tell us a little bit about those and what are you as a Liberal MLA, if you get elected, are going to do about it?
Absolutely. So I think that the answers will vary depending on which constituency you're in. I know I represent a constituency in the north end of Winnipeg, the constituency of Burroughs right now, and ideally, hopefully, I will be representing the constituency of Tyndall Park in about 49 days as of today. And when I'm knocking on the doors, the two major issues that I'm hearing is one, healthcare, the closing of the ER at Seven Oaks Hospital. Mm-hmm. People are outraged by this. They're incredibly concerned. One of the biggest problems I hear with it is people who work at Seven Oaks currently, they don't know what the plan is. They're terrified to go into work to find out that they may be losing their job that same day. We know of others who currently work at Seven Oaks who that has happened to.
And so that's happened with many other Crown Corporation employees in the past,
absolutely.
Right?
So it's fearful, and no one should have to live a life that way. People, and as our north end continues to grow, in which we are, whether it's that Castleberry area or that Waterford area, the population is growing, yet our healthcare services are being taken away from us. So we should be investing in the Seven Oaks Hospital. And if you look back historically, 20, 30 years ago, Seven Oaks Hospital was designed to actually be enormous. They built a helicopter pad on top of the hospital itself. Yeah. And now, all you see is cuts and cuts. We should be investing in Seven Oaks. The population is growing. It only makes sense. The second issue, to continue on with that answer, that I'm hearing a lot about is crime and safety. All over the city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, the country of Canada, we're hearing about this methamphetamine crisis. The big deal with the methamphetamine crisis is no one knows what to do with it. Our Liberal Party, we want to start differentiating between addictions, crime, and mental health. And I think if we can start doing that, that will be a great start to addressing this meth crisis. We also hear a lot about break-ins in the North End. You know, I was door knocking on Burrow Street just the other day near Inkster, and in a matter of 10 houses, I had 3 different people tell me that their garages had been broken into. That is way too many, and there's such a short span of houses that we do need to be addressing it. We need more community patrolling. We have groups like Bear Clan and Neighborhood Watch 204, but I believe if we had more community members getting out on the streets and taking care of the community, watching out for each other, that we would have less break-ins.
Not just the break-ins, there have been an increase in the violent crimes as well,
Absolutely.
and homicides as well.
Yeah.
Lately, there have been news all over the newspapers about those. Of course, public safety is
Yeah.
the paramount.
Number one importance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when we talk about this Crown Corporation, of course, ERs are getting closed, and then Crown Corporation employees, they are worried about their future.
Yeah.
And then there is this wage freeze
Yeah.
that's happening.
How are we to keep people motivated when we're cutting jobs, freezing wages? We want to give people incentive. We want people to do their best work, and people who are receiving the work, like healthcare workers, we need them to do their best work so our patients receive their best work.
And so, so are you saying the Liberal, if it comes into power?
Yeah.
So are they going to remove that freeze from the wages?
Yes.
Okay, so that is on your agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're also going to be reversing the cuts that have been made to the healthcare system and reopening the ERs.
And there has also been this K-12 review of the school education, whereby they might be amalgamating all the different school divisions into one. Like I would say in Ontario, there's only one school division that governs all of the schools in Ontario.
Yeah.
So the ruling party is going that way. Would you support it, or you
No.
are against it?
So we've already spoken out against it, actually. When it comes to amalgamating schools, I've spoken about that in the past. You can check Hansard inside of the Manitoba legislature. And we are against the amalgamation because students learn in different ways. And you know, a great example of this is a school in my current constituency of Burrows, Maples Collegiate. They have a school called Maples Met School. And it's a totally different curriculum. It is very hands-on, but students are thriving in it, and they are learning, and they are passing our standardization tests. And that's why we should be having more programs like that to adapt to all different types of students and encouraging students to pursue whatever they may want to.
So they could go into different trades and
Absolutely.
and get hands-on experience. Of course, we
Exactly.
need more funding into education. It's like investing in the future, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it will come back to help us.
Of
It's one of
course.
those things that are worth investing in.
Yeah.
And same with tuition rates. We want to be encouraging people to be going to post-secondary education.
Yeah,
make it
that was another
affordable.
thing I was going to talk about. There's been increase about 5% increase every year in the university fee.
And they've taken back the rebate. A lot of students, they counted on that rebate when they finished their post-secondary education. And now that they don't get it, they graduate, but they're left with nothing. And a lot of these students who have been in school for 4 or 5 years counting on this rebate.
And with the student loan, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, there are some things that the ruling party is trying to, I would say, impose against the will of the people. So that's why there is a lot of grudge against the ruling party. Of course, there are supporters, there are protesters to the policies, you know, it's everywhere. Then we talk about this election stunt, as the people are calling it.
What's that?
Reducing the PST by 1%
Oh.
near the elections and then announcing the elections. So what do you say about that?
I think that Manitobans know better. The government has chosen to reduce the PST, and they have chosen to do that literally the same month that they made the decision to call the election. It's a little suspicious, but people want lower PST. We want to be able to support that. We need to hope that the government isn't doing this merely to get reelected.
So when we talk about this PST rebate of 1%,
Yeah.
As you're saying, okay, you would support that too because it puts a little bit of money back into people's pockets, right?
Yes.
But then it comes at a price. So there'll be a deficit of about 325 million, if I'm right.
Yeah.
So would you justify ruling parties' decision to cut other amenities, to cut into this ER, into the medical field, and cuts into the education field to justify that cut down on the PST?
Yeah, I think that there are different ways that we could be saving money here in the province. For example, in the past few years actually, this Conservative government lost out on millions and millions of dollars from the federal government because they weren't willing to negotiate at the table, while all the other provinces and territories were able to negotiate with the federal government. Our province, Premier Brian Pallister, was the only one who could not. And because of that, we lost out on so much money. Imagine if we had that revenue, then perhaps people could be saving in other areas.
So with the Liberal government in the center, right?
Yes.
PC here, so there might be a lack of communication in between. But okay, let's look at another scenario.
Sure.
We hope and we wish you the best. Okay, the Liberal comes into power in Manitoba, but then again, there are federal elections coming up in October, I suppose, right?
Yep.
So what if the Liberal goes out of power in center?
Yeah.
In fact.
At
In
the federal
Ottawa,
level.
and then there might be same issue of lack of communication between the
Yeah.
Liberal government and some other party governing the federal arena.
I think it's really, really important to differentiate the federal government from the provincial government to municipal government. No matter who the ruling governments are, our jobs as politicians are to represent our constituents. So I'm a provincial politician. My job is to represent my provincial constituents. My father, he's a federal politician. His job is to represent his federal constituents. No matter what party we belong to, it's our job to bring those concerns and those ideas of our constituents into, in my case, the Manitoba legislature, in his case, Parliament in Ottawa. And so regardless of who is in government, that shouldn't matter. We should be able to work together on some sort of amicable level and try to accomplish the best.
Of course. So now that brings us to the question of ideology.
Yeah.
Right? What is your party's ideology and why is it different from other parties?
I think that the Liberal Party's ideology is very much so focused on middle class. I think we try to bring everyone together. People often make jokes about us just sticking right in the middle, but you know what? There's a lot of merit for that. Why do we have to be one extremist or the other? We have a platform of our own, and we want that platform to apply to everyone. We want to take care of people who are living on our streets. We don't want to rip off people who have made more money in their lifetime. We want a Manitoba that is going to succeed and prosper, and we want to make that happen regardless.
So do you think the federal preference of the people would affect the provincial elections here?
What I find is if I take the time to talk to people at the doors, it won't affect them. But if the constituents are not talking with their politicians, if they're not learning the differentiations between federal issues and provincial issues and different departments, then there's a lot of confusion. I know even at the doors right now, people are really upset that the provincial election was called. They're confused. They think that it's the federal election that we're campaigning for, and I don't blame them. We weren't supposed to be having a provincial election, but now that it's called, a lot of the conversations I'm having are, we're
here. About a year earlier, right?
It's 13 months earlier. It was supposed to be October 2020, and now it's September 10th, 2019. Yeah.
Well, of course, you were just, I think, 3 years into it, and then re-election has been called. It's extra work in such a short span of time. Of course, because you plan your agenda according to the full term.
Exactly.
If you talk about the grievances of the people, of course, you would want to address them, you want to resolve them, but you need time to do that. If you don't have enough time, sometimes they are bifurcated into periods, right?
And it's not only about that as well, but every time there is an election, it costs taxpayers dollars. And so
it's a year early now.
Exactly. And therefore, every election, we're going to have extra ones. And we could be saving money if the Premier Brian Pallister had kept to his word and kept the election October 2020.
So, what were the main grievances of the people of your constituency? I would call your current constituency,
Okay.
the boroughs.
Yep.
What were the main grievances that they had when you were elected, and what did you do about them?
I deal with a lot of housing issues. They're very constituency focused, so rather than broader issues, I go to the McDonald's every Monday night, and I often have constituents come to me and say, Cindy, I need help with this, for example. Now, I have to keep all my casework confidential, but a lot of things are housing issues. People being unfairly evicted, things like that. Cases about handy disabilities. So someone needs a ramp installed, but there are no more grants to have a ramp installed. Those programs have been completely cut. Derelict homes, fixing up homes, things like that. All the grants are gone, and when you represent a constituency in the North End, those grants are very helpful sometimes. Those are probably the most common issues that I face, but we often deal with people who are struggling with claims, whether it's workers' compensation claims, employment, EI, things from hydro issues, people needing new hydro boxes outside of their homes. That's one of the best parts about the job. Every day is very different. You're constantly learning new things, dealing with different departments, and it's a wonderful part of the job.
Do you schedule a separate dedicated time for the people to meet you at a certain place, or do you go meet them in their communities?
Bit of everything. The most common place I meet people is every Monday night I go to the McDonald's on McPhillips and Inkster from 6 to 8 p.m. And that's where people seem to feel very welcomed. It's a non-intimidating atmosphere, and they know that I'm always there, and it's usually after work hours, so people are available to come down. I also meet people in my own office, so if they want to book a private appointment, maybe they don't want to talk in front of other people who are in McDonald's at the time, I'll meet them in my office on McPhillips and Mountain Street. Oftentimes when I'm dealing with cases, for example, at Norwest Co-op, which is in Burroughs but also in Tyndall Park, I go down to the food center, and it's on Tyndall Road. And we often talk and sit for hours, end up having lunch, and it's something I've become very familiar with. Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about two major crown corporations.
Sure.
MPI, Manitoba Public Insurance, and Manitoba Liquor and Lottery.
Okay.
So there have been talks by the ruling party that they would want to privatize them to make them more competitive, make them more beneficial to the public. Do you believe in it?
The word privatization is very nerve-wracking. As far as Crown Corporation's MPI goes, we have released something on that, the Liberal platform, and the main objective behind that is making things more transparent. Political parties, political affiliations should have no say in Crown corporations. And unfortunately, and we've inquired about this and we're hopefully going to receive some answers, unfortunately, it appears that political parties have had some say, and that can be very worrisome. It's corrupt.
In choosing the provider?
Yeah, and the board members and things like that. And it should be a non-biased, a non-partisan corporation. Because then you get things like fear-mongering going on, and we want to stray away from that as much as possible. Now, liquor and lotteries, we've talked about that a little bit inside of the legislature, but I don't want to get too ahead of the game. Our party is planning to come out with something on that for our platform, and I don't want to break that seal.
Okay, so we should wait for an official announcement from your party.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about carbon tax? It's a new thing that's been introduced. It's been with the primary motive of giving back to the environment, right? There's going to be carbon tax, but there's also been, I think, a refunds sort of a thing, or maybe prepayments as to the carbon tax payments when the income is assessed and stuff. What do you have to say about that? Do you believe in this imposition of carbon tax and then making good for it by the federal government in the paying them back or something like that?
I think that what needs to happen are, again, and I guess supposedly after the federal election now, the federal government, whomever is in power, has to meet with the provinces the way that they did with healthcare. I think they have to address carbon tax in very small units. They shouldn't be saying this is going to be carbon tax throughout the entire country, because it differs depending where you are, the incomes of people. I think it's inevitable. It's going to have to be discussed, and we need to continue the consultations. Yeah.
Okay, so but that also takes us to the issue as to climate change. We've seen politicians totally discarding that issue as if it's not there. But Liberal is very into it. Liberal believes in the climate change and they want to do something about it. They want to rectify it. They want to, as they say, they want to provide a better future, better environment to our future generations. Yeah. So what's your take on this?
Well, I learned a lot about climate change since being elected, and whether it's through the Liberal Party of Manitoba, but also they're called Youth in a Green War. It's a movement that started at Sisler High School. It's my old high school, also in my constituency, and so I'm very proud of them. And they've taught me so much. I've gone on walks with them. They've come to the legislature before. I've had the honor of asking their questions to the Premier inside of question period. And through them, through the party, through the past few years of being elected, what I've learned is we need to provide people with opportunities if we want to think about environmental changes. And so whether that's providing incentives for electric cars, for building owners to plant their own trees.
There used to be incentives, but now they've been cut down.
Absolutely. They've all been cut down.
Yeah.
And so whether it's that, it's recognizing that there are opportunities here if you look into them, and then it's building that awareness. Allow people to figure them out. It's simple little things, whether it's no more plastic cups, maybe it's the straws. I know they're discontinuing straws, I believe in 2020. And so get people using, there's like these rubber straws that come with cleaners. They're fantastic. Little things that make a huge difference, whether it's compost bins, it's that education, and it really is thinking about the future. And I know you can say that with virtually any topic, but when it comes to the environment, if you look outside, it's changed from 10 years ago. Our streets here in Winnipeg, whether it's... They're busier, absolutely. There's more pollution out there. There's different smells out there, and we need to be taking care of our streets better.
So this climate change is one issue. Then there is also, you also touched this issue in the beginning, the substance abuse, and then the problems coming out of that, right? We need to, I would say that every ruling party, whosoever it may be, they should put in more money into the medical facilities and especially into the substance abuse part, because a lot of youth is going into it with no way out. Yeah. So would Liberal, if they come into power, would they do something dedicated to this thing?
Yeah, well, we've already announced that if we form government, we want to invest money into advertising, whether it's paper advertising, online, big billboards, things like that, about the meth crisis. People have to understand the severity behind methamphetamine. Right now, billions of dollars went into cannabis use, and that's terrific. We want people knowledgeable on that, but no money has been invested into making people aware of the severity of methamphetamine. And so that's one thing we have committed to wanting to do. The other day I heard a story. I was talking to a younger person in my constituency, and we were talking about the meth crisis. And this person, I'm guessing about 20 years old, says to me, well, I'm just going to try it because you have to try all the drugs. And it was extremely alarming. It's not
something you should try.
Exactly.
It is. It could end your life.
Exactly. And so, but this is a 20-year-old, fully educated, should know better. And it's our system. Like, we as a province are failing to educate people on methamphetamine. If they were educated, I'd like to hope that this person wouldn't even be curious about trying it.
Yeah, and when we talk about meth, of course, that's a substance of course you don't want to try it. Could be the last
bad
substance
idea
you would ever do.
Yeah.
But then again, Liberal was a very liberal into introduction of cannabis and its use. Of course, they put in a lot of literature, a lot of investment into educating people about it.
Yeah.
But then again, it's also basically a narcotic, right? So how do you justify that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's my job to represent my constituents. I remember when we started talking about cannabis inside the Manitoba legislature, it had already passed federal government and we were talking about how it was going to be distributed and we had committees going on. I remember I received a bunch of emails from my constituents and predominantly they were for the legislation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what was the main reason behind it? Did they want to go for something natural than a laboratory created thing?
I don't think that's necessarily the issue. I think that we have done studies now and many other countries that have legalized marijuana. We've learned that the usage of it doesn't in fact go up. A person might try it 1 or 2 more times than the next person, but the overall usage doesn't go up. It's actually a safer drug because you know that it's clean, it's not laced, and they can use the revenue of it towards the province rather than the black market.
Okay, so lastly, I would just touch on Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program.
Please, yeah.
So that's been, I think, the backbone of immigrants coming to this province and adding to the workforce and adding to the economy and all. There's the process, I would say it's part provincial, part federal, right?
Yeah, the EOI stage is federal.
Yeah. So it's, but then again, there has been like stricter rules now than they were before about 2-3 years ago. The policies are more stringent than now, than they were before. So would you do something, would you take up this matter to the federal government for making immigration a little easier through this Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program?
I don't know if easier is necessarily the word, it's fairer. It's ensuring if people are meeting the qualifications, they should be accepted, but too many people are being rejected. I think that, again, regardless of who's in government, governments need to work together. I'm in a very wonderful situation because I get to talk to my father as a federal politician, and I grew up in politics, so I'm very familiar with the provincial nominee program. Now, in the past, under the NDP government, we had a backlog of over 6,000 people waiting to hear if they were going to be accepted or rejected, and that's because
the delay was the major factor.
I had a person waiting over 5 years just to hear if they were going to be accepted.
They just want to know about their fate, okay?
Exactly, they want to plan their lives.
Their life, right?
Yep, absolutely. And so now, with the Conservative government, they've made it so you can still immigrate here, but it is much more difficult. It is much more expensive. They've implemented fees that make no sense. When the provincial nominee program was initially created 30 years ago, there was no $500 fee. Applications were being answered within 3 months of being applied for. And now it can still take up to about, the government is saying 6 months, but I still have constituents who have waited over 2 years. So it still takes a predominant amount of time, a large amount of time.
It should be more transparent, right?
Yeah, and just it shouldn't take that long. What is the holdup? What is the secrecy? And there is a lot of secrecy going on. I know when I first got elected, I'm immigration critic for the Liberal Party. And when I first got elected, I went down to Immigration Manitoba. And I just wanted to sit in on one of the, it's like a conference for people who are applying to the provincial nominee. And so you would think as an elected official that I would be allowed to do that. Now at the beginning of the meeting, we went around the room and we had to introduce ourselves. I didn't think I had to pretend to be someone else. So I said, oh, my name's Cindy Lamoureux, I'm an MLA. And then I got told to leave the meeting. And that was extremely concerning because what is going on in those meetings that MLAs can't hear about?
It's a provincial nominee program.
Exactly.
And MLA should be sitting
there,
right?
It is very worrisome. And so we've done a lot of work on the provincial nominee program. I did a sit-in at the Manitoba legislature. I slept on the marble floors for about 30 hours because I wanted the minister responsible for immigration to provide some answers. And it's something we're going to have to continue fighting for.
And then there's this cut in the student medical insurance. So they'll have to look up to their colleges to provide them a group insurance so they could afford the insurance basically. So is it going to remain the same as it is now? Would the Liberal government, if it came into power, would do something about it?
Again, we have not released anything on that, but I have spoken against the changes to the healthcare for immigrant students over the past year or so. Was that 2 years ago now? It happened a while ago. And the biggest concern with that is Canada prides itself on our healthcare system. And as Justin Trudeau says, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. And so whether you're an immigrant student going to school here or you were born and raised in the south end of Winnipeg, I don't care. You deserve to have our health care. So we should be making it fair.
Of course, if it's not fair to them right now, they might, study and then move out of the province, go to some other province that would give them better
Exactly.
facilities.
Or they might get severely sick because they
Yeah.
couldn't afford to go to the doctor and end up having to stay in the hospital for longer stays and end up costing more money and using hospital beds.
Well, there are many issues, and we hope to the resolution of a lot of them if a Liberal government comes into the Assembly. We wish you all the very best for your future elections.
I appreciate it.
And we might even call you again to discuss more of the issues, but now we have a very limited time. So all I could do is wish you the best
Thank you.
for the elections coming up on 10th of September. And thank you for coming in our studio and talking to us.
Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you,
time.
Cindy.
Bye.